Do you work for China? That's what Trump asked a reporter at the White House, and it's part of a much bigger problem. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Well, for better or worse, President Trump sure knows how to thrust hot-button issues into the spotlight. At a recent White House coronavirus press conference, Trump threw down with this journalist.
Only last week, there were multiple flights coming from China full of medical supplies.
Yes.
Companies like Huawei and Alibaba has been donating to the United States
People
like
I know very well.
1.5 million N95 masks and also a lot of medical gloves and much more medical supplies.
Sounds like a statement more than a question.
And Chinese Ambassador Cui Tiankai last night wrote an op-ed on New York Times calling to cooperation with the United States. So are you personally working directly with China?
We just signed a trade deal.
Also fighting with the
It's the biggest deal probably ever made.
Okay, from there, Trump talks for about a minute about the great preliminary trade deal he signed with China. I'll spare you. But that's a super weird question that this reporter asked. Most of it was just talking about how great the Chinese Communist Party is and how Chinese companies closely linked with the Chinese Communist Party are helping the U.S. And as for the op-ed she mentioned by Chinese Ambassador Cui Tiankai, the ambassador wrote, "This is not the time for finger-pointing. This is a time for solidarity, collaboration, and mutual support." Of course he's saying he doesn't want finger-pointing. That's because the Chinese Communist Party is to blame for the coronavirus. That's like saying, hey, I lit your house on fire, but now we're both trapped inside, so please don't point your finger at me. As for the medical supplies donated by Chinese companies, please keep in mind that Chinese state-run Xinhua has said China can withhold medical supplies to, quote, throw America into the mighty sea of the coronavirus. Speaking of state-run media, back to Trump and the reporter.
I hope they're going to honor the deal. We'll find out.
With China, are you cooperating with
I don't
China?
know. Who are you working for, China? Do you work for China or are you with a newspaper? Who are you with?
Hong Kong Phoenix TV.
Who owns that, China? Is it owned by China?
Hong Kong.
No, is it owned by the state?
No, it's not. It's a private-owned company.
Okay, good. Okay.
Wow. I've never seen anything like that at a White House briefing before. Now, some people were upset at Trump. I know, you're shocked. But it turns out Hong Kong Phoenix TV isn't quite the private company that the reporter says it is. This 2017 report from Freedom House says Phoenix TV is owned by a former military officer, Liu Changle, with close ties to Beijing officials. Their coverage is typically favorable to the CCP, and it has been used as an outlet for airing televised confessions by various detained CCP critics, most notably all 5 Hong Kong booksellers abducted by Chinese security forces in late 2015. So it shouldn't surprise you that CCTV, China Central Television, reportedly holds a 10% stake in Phoenix. In 2018, a former Phoenix TV news director testified to the FCC that it's essentially controlled by the propaganda department and has a directive not to report positively on the United States. He said, "I know from personal experience that Phoenix TV's content is subject to the dictates of the leadership of the Central Communist Propaganda Department, Central Communist Overseas Propaganda Office, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which often directly sent instructions to Phoenix Satellite TV." Which is why the Hoover Institute calls it a semi-official Chinese media outlet. So you might be wondering, why does a reporter for a basically Chinese Communist Party-controlled media have access to the US President and White House briefings? After all, American journalists are not allowed to ask questions directly to China's leader. Neither would Chinese state-run media ever publish an op-ed from the American ambassador. Well, that's because the US has freedom of the press, but China does not. But the Communist Party takes advantage of America's freedoms to undermine America's freedoms. Chinese state-run media, or so-called private media like Phoenix TV that are still state-controlled, are treated the same as any other media outlet in the United States. But the CCP virus has put the Chinese Communist Party's influence on the United States in the spotlight, which they hate. The whole reason New York City has become a ghost town, for instance, is because the Communist Party covered up the virus. And the CCP virus also put Chinese state-run media operating in the United States in the spotlight as well. At the beginning of March, the Trump administration put new restrictions on Chinese state-run media operating in the U.S., specifically the official state-run media like Xinhua, not outlets like Phoenix TV. China responded by kicking out American journalists working for definitely not state-run U.S. media like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post. And now, U.S. officials are considering expelling suspected Chinese spies who work at Chinese state-run media outlets in the U.S., which is not the same as kicking out all Chinese journalists working for state-run media. And that still wouldn't even apply to Phoenix TV, which is technically not state-run, even though it's state-influenced. But the Chinese Foreign Ministry is spinning it as if the U.S. is kicking out all Chinese journalists, which is false, and more unbelievable, they're suggesting the reason behind it is that Trump doesn't want Chinese reporters discovering the truth about the coronavirus in the U.S. You know, because the U.S. Army actually started the coronavirus. Or wait, it was Italy. They can't decide who to accuse now. Speaking of Chinese Communist Party propaganda, the Phoenix TV reporter's question to Trump about cooperating with China is part of a new propaganda narrative that the party is now pushing. They're saying that the world needs to cooperate with China to fight the coronavirus. But I'll have more on that in our next episode. Now, I'll answer a question from a member of the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army. Since YouTube has been demonetizing us so much, the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army has stepped up. They're viewers like you who help us keep up the fight of truthful, uncensored information by supporting China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon. Today's question comes from William Adderholt. Buried under all the CCP virus news, there was a brief mention of Hong Kong opposition politician Cheng Lai-king being arrested and charged with sedition. What happened? Wow, great question. That even slipped under my radar. So, here's what happened. You remember all those super intense protests against the Chinese Communist Party in Hong Kong last year. We were there for a lot of it. And while we were there, an Indonesian journalist was shot in the eye with a policeman's rubber bullet, leaving her permanently blind in that eye. She asked for the policeman's ID so she could file charges. Guess what? Hong Kong police refused. Which brings us to pro-democracy district councilor Cheng Lai-king. Cheng Lai-king forwarded and later deleted a Facebook post that detailed the name and identification number of the officer alleged to have shot the Indonesian journalist. And so Hong Kong police arrested Cheng Lai-king for sedition, a crime under the old period of British colonial rule. The offense, which carries a punishment of 2 years in prison or a fine of 5,000 Hong Kong dollars for the first violation, has been rarely used in the past 50 years. So thanks for your question, William. I might have missed this important story otherwise. And thank you for watching, and a big thanks to the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army who make this show possible. If you'd like to hear your question answered on the show, go to patreon.com/ChinaUncensored to learn more. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.